Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Zack Olinger. In this podcast series, I talk about relationships. Now, I know, as a man, you may not want to talk about relationships, or you may even tell me that the relationship that you're in is already pretty good. But I'm going to invite you to consider this. Could you be a little bit more fulfilled in the relationship that you have? I would like to have you consider that there may be other ways to kind of see the conflicts that are truly just unnecessary that we all experience in a different light. And if you're open to receiving or just giving me a little bit of your time, then I look forward to my guests and I inspiring you to become a man that can have more freedom, less conflict, and more pleasure in their relationships. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah. So, I'm just thinking here about yeah, I guess one thing to that I don't know, I just kind of want to toss out there too is about it's just about relationships too is I was talking to my partner last night because it came up this whole idea of of cheating and things like that. And you know I've changed so much, on how I view like relationships. And I went through a divorce in 2014, and it took me 5 years to release my ex-wife. Honestly, way longer than I expected. So many things I was holding on to, and like even though
Yes.
it was my choice to leave. I held on with like iron fists, man, and and there's just that whole journey has been interesting to me. And now just when I look at things from like the perspective of learning more about like just masculine and feminine energy, and just learning to let people be themselves, and where it kind of comes from, and how it expresses itself, and how one experiences it in our life, I've just found it an interesting thing. So I've definitely been through like the same kind of experience, right? So somebody's cheated on me. I've had the same type of like the jealousy, the anger, the hurt, all of that stuff. And one of the things, like, the kind of pass through the eye of the needle, right? To get onto another side, a different perspective of that, to where again, I'm not saying it wouldn't hurt, but to totally like pass through the pain and the jealousy and hurt, and see it in a completely different light, and not have that like it's like a poison inside of us where we really
Yes.
feel it. Yeah. So the perspective I've started to gain by learning about like masculine and feminine energy is that, with the feminine energy, the way it works is that, like, as men, we care about like our past, like what we've done, right? We have credentials X, Y, Z. We've done this and this, and that means shit to us, right? And where as a woman, they're like, I don't give a shit if you've done X, Y, and Z, because the feminine energy seriously only gives a shit about right now. And we've experienced this as men, right? Like where you've done something or said something, and or maybe forgot something, and the woman is like pissed off, she's hurt, right? And you're kind of like, okay, well, that's this one time. Like, I've only done this one time. Like, I've got 27 times I could pull up and show you when I've like shown up really awesome. And she's like, I could give a shit about those 27 times, because right now I'm fucking pissed off, right? We've all experienced that. So what that we got to look at that and see it as like a nature of like, that's how the feminine energy works, and start to get awareness around that. And it's kind of like, okay, well, if the now is really all that the feminine cares about, and they don't give a shit about the past, um then we can start to like look at how women show up in our lives and what they do in a different way. So, like, for example, like with me and my partner, I've definitely been triggered because my partner is currently married. And so there's been times where I'm like, okay, even though I'm the other guy, quote unquote, like, that doesn't mean that I'm not emotionally invested, or that like I have my own wants, right? And there's been times when my partner has gone back and done things like with her husband, and that has triggered me before. And it wasn't until I started to recognize and learn more about the feminine where I'm like, you know what, like I can't be upset with her for a number of reasons. I mean, like, one, it's her husband, but to manage my own pain and my own kind of jealousy reaction, right? So this is about learning about how to manage myself, right? Not about like the circumstances. Oh, she's married, it's her husband, that kind of thing. Managing my energy around it. So when I started to learn and appreciate how the feminine energy works, I was like, oh, well, like that's just how it works for her. In the now, that was right for her. Like that is what was the right thing. That's what felt right to her. And I started looking at my past relationships and being like, and just having compassion, and just being like, oh, like that's how it works, because like for them, for the feminine energy, it's just about in the now and what feels right for them in the now. And it's not that they're being malicious or being, like deceitful or like any of that stuff. Because as men, we'll look at it that way. We'll be like, that bitch fucking cheated, or like, she intentionally did this, like that kind of a thing. And it's like, there may be some of that sometimes, but like even if that were the case, even if she decided to intentionally use it to hurt you, that doesn't change the fact that it felt right for her in the now. And so like
Yeah, yeah.
and so we just got to look at it as men as being like, that's the nature of the feminine. And I think because of that, again, we don't know what we don't know, right? And like I haven't heard, my dad didn't talk to me about it like this. This isn't talked about on TV or modeled in culture.
No, no, not at
uh,
all.
but if as men we started to be able to look at women and just kind of understand like more of the nature, and this is just one piece of the feminine nature that I've started to learn more about, but it shifted everything, because then it allows me to not have that pain and not have that jealousy. And like, once, it's just like any other form of awareness that we were just talking about through our discussion, where once you have it, then like, yeah, you might slip back, but you're going to be able to work from a way forward, and to alleviate that. And it was just like, damn, like if I had only known like this information like a long time ago, like I would have saved myself like years of suffering. I wouldn't have held on for 5 years. I would have, I
Yeah.
mean, this poison I was carrying around, like it's the quality of my life is what I'm trying to say, would have been like magnitudes better and so
Yes.
much quicker, So I just offer that out there because I think it's just really important for like men and women, like in any type of relationship. And I used that knowledge too, like with my mom, right? It wasn't just that I recognized that I had these expectations of how I wanted her to show up. It was also just not understanding like her as at a feminine nature level of like when she was expressing herself, just to like, that's that's what she's doing. It's not personal. It's not, that's just how it works. Like the way the feminine
Yeah.
expresses themselves. So it's not just in intimate relationships. This kind of information like changes how we relate to the other gender, however it appears, either in same-sex relationships or heterosexual relationships, co-workers, friendships, family members. It doesn't matter. Like just this awareness of how this nature works, and then seeing how we both have it, like how I have it inside of us. We have both energies inside of us, because I can look back and see how in my own life, like that was what felt right for me in the now, and that's my feminine, like. And I know a lot of guys will be like, I'm not sure I've got feminine energy, and I'm like, I promise you that you do.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
it's it's yeah, a lot of some guys will be antagonized by that, or resist that idea, but it's not a detraction from your masculinity. Okay, it's not saying you're
Yeah.
lesser of a man or anything like that. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
recognizing how we work, how we work as energetic.
And I think that's
Yeah,
the beautiful thing, because we're all pretty much all the same. And like I
exactly.
was hitting to earlier on, to sit and actually know yourself and be happy with yourself, be comfortable in your own skin, love yourself. If you aren't part of the way there with that, and then you're trying to figure out somebody else, it's you're kind of on a hiding to nothing. You know, it's like you have got to get quiet with yourself. There's a lot of people very, very uncomfortable with actually getting quiet with themselves or poking holes in their cell, or that, you know, we get this belief, like you say, a manly man, and I'm this and I'm that, and this is her and she should be doing this, and it's just all bullshit. It's just all bullshit. It is. You've just, you know, get quiet with yourself, and that's the good thing with this kind of. Now, what you were just saying before, I know there may be some people sitting saying, well, oh, that's not good, Zach. What good can come of that? You're just purposely putting yourself through torment. You know, why are you doing what you're doing? And it's just everybody's opinion. People's got a different opinion. I could say one sentence in a room of 10 people. Now, one guy might just think, yeah, I agree with that. Another guy might say, well, that's just triggered me. I want to go and pull his head off. Somebody's sitting there saying, I don't know what everyone's getting all hyped up about. Do you know, it's all with perceptions and with beliefs from with experiences that would come along in life. Now, it's like somebody may be listening who's, like you say, you've been both sides of the coin. So somebody might be listening saying, oh, I sorry, you're saying that, it's okay, you saying that, but you wouldn't like it done to yourself. And, you know, it's again, we're just, instead of coming, and I actually seen a lot of this in Katrina's got fibromyalgia, and it hit her at 29 years of age, and she was like Forrest Gump. She walked everywhere, really fit, and woke up one morning and our knees were up like puddings, our ankles were up like puddings. We just didn't know what it was, and we went through a lot of stuff and found out it was fibromyalgia. There's not a great deal known about it, so she started joining some kind of forums, and the hatred on these forums, because I used to read the comments, and I don't like seeing people hurt. I never have. And a lot of people's got this perception of like, oh, Dorman, they're just like knocking people around, and it's not that at all. When I was there, I just regarded all them people as like my sons. You know, we're all an arsehole when we've had a drink sometimes. You know, we've all been that arsehole. So my job was to make sure everybody was safe and to get them so they got home safe to their families. But yeah, going back to Katrina, she got this fibromyalgia and the hatred on these sites, and I just thought it was like, just say I'm on this site with you now, and I had fibromyalgia, and I say, you know what it is, Zach? Katrina just doesn't understand. I feel less of a man now because I can't go to work, and you offer the advice is, you see, she doesn't understand, Mac, and all you're doing is compounding. And that's what I've seen on these sites. And I just thought, well, this isn't right. And I inadvertently, what I was doing is, because Katrina wasn't well, I was going out to work, and then I was coming in and I was running around, I was making the tea, and I was, no, darling, don't do that. And because she was in the throes of depression, because she felt like she had been robbed of her fitness, and she could see herself going downhill, and we were listening to all this hatred and these sites, you know. And I actually done a thing called fibromyalgia, the other half, because I looked and I seen it in myself. I thought, I didn't realize what I was doing at first. What I was doing is I was taking more away from her by mollycoddling and running around after her, so she was feeling even more worthless. So what I ended up doing, once I learned my lesson and seen what was happening, and it kind of was partly because of what I was reading on these forums. I used to say things like, would you like me to make tea? Or if she went and got up and started doing the vacuuming, and or just leave her alone and let her do it. And then when it got too much for her, I said, do you want me to take over? And that's what I seen. So that's what I started wanting to help people in their relationships, because what she was going through is, he's not going to want to be with us anymore because I'm not the same person and I can't do things I used to do. So she had that self-talk, the self-doubt and the pain, as well as all of the symptoms that she had from the fibromyalgia and the depression. And then because I'm seeing somebody that I cherish and love in pain, I'm running around, you know, trying to do everything for her, and I was taken from her. And I didn't realize at the time. I only learned by reading all these things. And I would see people who were going through the same thing saying to the person that had put a post on, I know where you're coming from. They just don't get it, do they? They just don't get it, and you could see the anger in the words, and I just thought, this isn't right. People, and that's what I've done it for. I thought people need to know what it's like, because she had fibromyalgia, but we're both in it. We're both equally in it. She was suffering, but I was not being part of the solution. I was being part of the problem as well, and I didn't even realize it. It was out of love and the best intention, but it wasn't actually helping. So you've got to be careful, especially with what your beliefs are. If you have experienced something in your past, like whereas I have, I mean, I hold no judgment whatsoever with anybody now. Like when you told us about that, I didn't sit and think, oh, well, I know what that's like. I've been on that side. Just wait till I see you when I come over to America, Zach. I just don't, you know, because that was my experience. That was my lessons that I had to learn, you know, and it was for my own growth. But people don't do that, and what they do, when you react like that, you rob yourself. You rob yourself of an experience and a lesson, a chance to learn from it. And that's all you have to do: learn lessons and be the best version of yourself you can possibly be.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That brings up a couple of things that that I want to, because that experience. So like a few talking about how you showed up and like trying to fix things, and like how she like felt more disempowered, you know, from that, you know, just kind of. So there's two things that came up from that from that particular piece that you were just speaking to. And that's one of them is like, you know, as men, you know, we have this natural inclination. We see something and we're like, okay, that's a problem, I'm going to fix it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times where women are like, I don't want you to fix shit. I just want to be seen and heard. I just want to be able to express myself, and like, you know, I'm not incapable. I'm not crazy, because that's the other thing that we definitely do is like when a woman is expressing themselves, so you'd like to label it as crazy, especially when it gets really emotional. As men, we're like,
Yeah.
oh shit, that's crazy. And I find that, and I don't like that particular label, because like it totally antagonizes the feminine, and it just shows how we don't understand what's being expressed. But that's one thing, right? So like you because of everything we were modeled, you know, and taught as men, like we solve problems. Your partner had what you interpreted as a problem, so you, as a man, you're going to fix that shit, you're going to take care of her, right? And so it's funny that, like, you know, it's just another great example of the, like, how what we've been taught actually perpetuates and creates unnecessary conflict or unnecessary problems, because it's not the right way to go about it. It's not an empowering, it comes from a place of lack of understanding. And like we think that we understand because that's what we were taught, that's what we're modeled, it's what's shown in our culture and like in the movies. Like, how could it be wrong? You know what I mean? Like, how could the whole fucking world be wrong? You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, it's no fault of our own. But if we choose and learn a different perspective, we can start to realize, shit, there's a better way to go about it, you know, like, and the woman will respond to that, be like, yes, thank you. That's what I'm talking about, you know? Um, so that's one piece, you know, and you came to that awareness where you're like, oh, like, I'm going to let her vacuum, and when she is ready for me to take over, I could take over. And it may not even get to that point, but I'll show up when I need to show up. I'll wait for her to tell me, you know, that kind of a thing. And then the other piece that came up was when you were talking about how she communicated to you, I'm assuming, that, oh, her fear of you maybe not wanting to be with her because of a change, right? And so that's the other piece I wanted to talk about, is that it's the feminine's nature to change, right? Now, not necessarily like, fibromyalgia and all that stuff, but just the principle of change. Okay, just the principle of changing. It's the feminine nature to change, to flow, right? And as men, we're very static, right? We're just who we are, and we don't change very much throughout our entire life. It's just not our nature. We just are pretty much who we are, and that's just it, right? Women, have you ever met a woman that doesn't change? Right? I mean, like ever, like it's the very nature of the feminine to change. And so I was curious about that with her fear of change, because it makes me wonder from a woman's perspective, have they been programmed to be like, hey, if you change, your man's not going to want you? Like, have we instilled that fear in them and does that push them further away from being connected to their feminine energy, because it's just the nature of the feminine energy to change? So there's two disempowering things going on. One is that what you've been taught is, as a man, you're going to fix shit, and that's going to disempower her. And then another thing could be, has she been programmed to think that she shouldn't change because her man won't want her? So that's like two disempowering things for the feminine to experience, right? And so I'm
Yeah.
just really keen on that, because I think there's definitely been like this like really subtle attack, consciously or unconsciously, on the feminine. And like, again, no fault of our own, because it's just what we've been born into on both sides.
Yeah.
But it just makes me, I have big questions around that. It just makes me curious about that. And there's just one quote I want to put out there too. I think Albert Einstein said it, because I love it, right? So it's that men marry women in the hopes that they won't change, but they do. And women marry men in the hopes that they will change, but they don't. That's not exactly how he said it, but like that's
Yeah.
basically the idea, right? And it just goes to that idea of the masculine and feminine energy, right? So it's just like, you know, it's okay for
Yeah.
your woman to change, because that's exactly what she's going to do. And I went to like a Tony Robbins event, and one of the things that he mentioned, this particular thing stuck out to me, because this is just another example of it. I forget the CEO of Zappos' name, right? They sell shoes online, and the company was going bankrupt. And the CEO came in, new CEO came in, and he's like, "Look, we're going to try this. We're going to let the women try on as many shoes, get as many shoes as they want, and whichever ones they don't want to keep, we'll pay for the return shipping." And people were like, "This is a horrible idea. We're going to go bankrupt." And he's like, "Look, we're going bankrupt anyway. What do we have to lose?" And it was from that change that they became successful, because what they found is that women would keep shoes that didn't even fit them in the moment. Okay, didn't fit them in the moment, but they kept them. They kept them because they wanted them, and they had the hope or desire that they would fit into them someday. And I remember I was at this event, and guys were like, "What the fuck? That makes zero sense." And I was like, "It makes total sense." I was like, "Do you know why?" I said, "Because women change." I was like, "Have you ever met a woman that has never changed?" And they're like, "That's a fair point." And I'm like, that's the thing, is like, they know themselves, at least at some level, consciously or unconsciously, that they will change, and they might fit into those motherfuckers someday. Like,
It's like these. It's the whole stereotypes, isn't it? Like you say, what you brought up with, your partner says something, you're like, "Hold on, I'll do your shit in a minute while I just go and clean my sword and slay this dragon for you." Or she says, "Oh, well, tell us how you feel," and you go, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, I haven't got feelings. What are you talking about? don't say stupid things like that to me, woman." It's all shit. It's just all bullshit, And I think that's the problem, and we're trying to pigeonhole everything. We're like bookends. We don't like we're like the beginning and the end. That's what we're like. That's what we feel comfortable with. And I was thinking a bit today, and you've probably heard this yourself, and I hope a lot of, right, I know a lot of the listeners will, is when you get maybe your grandparents or an aunt or an uncle will say, "Do you know what it is? The sanctity of marriage isn't the same anymore. People just get married and divorced willy-nilly. Back in our day, you met somebody, you were with them." I mean, like I was saying, my mum and dad's been together for 60 years. And the grandparents were together. Back then it was taboo if you had a child out of wedlock and things like that, all these things. So I was kind of pondering the day, and I thought, well, is it right or wrong, and are we now doing it right, or people just now realizing, hey, this marriage doesn't work, we're not going to be together anymore, so we'll get divorced and we'll find somebody that we're going to be happy with. And were they doing it wrong back in the day? And it makes you wonder how many people stopped together for 60, 50, 40 years in a relationship just because society deemed at that time, back then, it was when you met somebody at 16, that was your childhood's, your sweetheart, that's who you stayed with, and you've worked at it. And that's what we get. You've got to work at a relationship. No, a relationship shouldn't take it. I mean, work's such a dirty word to me. That, you know, a relationship shouldn't have to be work. You shouldn't have to work at a relationship. It should be something natural and something that you enjoy, and that's what it is. So that, yeah, I was kind of thinking that the day. So I thought, was it them doing it wrong? And people are now just realizing, hold on, I don't have to be in this relationship. Yes, when I first met her, I was physically attracted to her and I wanted that, but now I've got that daily. I realize and that's, I think, there's a lot of things people get bored. Now, you'll have yourself, I've got a lot of different pals. Some are like bloody ferrets, you know. It's just, and I like I say, I've worked on the doors, and I'm an observer, not in a creepy way. I just like to watch people and watch how they go on, and I watch people going through all the different phases of like 1 pint, 2 pints, 3 pints, 1 bottle of wine, 2 bottles of wine, and you can see them changing in front of your eyes. And I sit and watch people, and I watch the way they react. Now, me personally, I've never, I mean, I don't drink in any case, but I've never been one for going kind of night clubbing and trying to go and meet a girl on a date in a nightclub. It's a bit like the same as I don't really like interviews per se, and I've interviewed a lot of people for jobs, because who you get, and I mean, you're taught this from school, you've got to be a certain way, you've got to talk a certain way, and that's not the person that you're going to get when you go to work. That's not the real them. That's the persona that they're putting on for an interview. It's exactly the same when you put on your best threads, you get your cologne on, and you go out with the boys, and the girls are all dolled up, and you all go there, meet up, sleep together, get in a relationship, move in together. 3 months down the line, you're thinking, who's this person? Who is it? And that's just my perception, how I've always looked at things. I just think, you know, get to know someone. I mean, me and Katrina knew each other for quite a long time. I was actually our brother's foreman, and then we've done subsea and aerospace engineering together, and so I knew the family. But I had no idea that you liked this. And when I separated from me ex-wife, it was then a sister actually told us, I went round to see me pal, and she got on the phone to Katrina and says, he's here. And she come running down the road to come to the house, and coming all nonchalant, you know. But I hadn't absolutely no idea. And then we just got on chatting, and it's I mean, God, I think we had been together for about 2-3 months, and I was thinking that we'd been together 6-7 months. The time was just, as time slowed down, and do you know, when you mentioned the honeymoon period, it's just been like that ever since, you know. And it's just, and we share so much, and we'll laugh together all the time, and that's what I look for. That's what I truly look for. And people might be thinking and listening and thinking, well, you just say as earlier on that if it ended, would you be? Well, we know, because that was the experience I was meant to experience. So if we weren't together, yes, it would hurt. Would I want her to move on and find somebody who that just meant to be with? Maybe that was just, you know, we just don't know. Nobody knows what the grand scheme is, you know. You've just got to get through it best you can and be as happy as you can, you know, because the negativity does nothing for you whatsoever.
Yeah. And I would agree too, like about what you were saying about like how older generations approach their relationships and everything. It just reminded me, again from awareness, where it's kind of like, yeah, you stick together for 60 years, but you got to ask, like, were you really happy? Like, because yeah, some of them probably were, some of them probably totally weren't. I mean, how many of us have seen old ass pictures from like back in the day, and yeah, they were a family stuck together, but neither one of those people, you could tell in the energy, neither
Feels like
one
a
of the
smacked arse.
yeah, neither one of those people are happy, dude. you know and so like that's the thing, is it's kind of like everything in this 3D world's got a beginning, middle, and an end, and it runs a natural course. So like, why the same thing is going to be true of relationships, just like you just said, where it's just kind of like, it's not that it wouldn't hurt, but or like be kind of like, oh, that sucks a little bit, but at the same time, like, there's this acceptance of like, it ran its natural course. You know what I mean? Like, it's what it was supposed to be. It happened, like, all right. And so but yeah, so like, I understand the question of like, were they doing it wrong or were they doing it right? And it's kind of like, I wonder, just for time periods, like if it's just like the quote unquote right thing to do, like, and maybe now for us now, the right thing to do is be like, yeah, like, these marriages or these relationships aren't going to be lifelong. Maybe I've got three like really intimate people that I'm going to be partners with for like my lifespan, because that's like what's right in the now, like, as far as like an overall energetic, like societal type of thing, because there's major lessons, right? There's totally, we learn stuff through these experiences, and maybe that's what we're supposed to do to keep evolving the species, so to speak. Maybe
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
part of the overall like design of it. I don't know, but yeah, it just goes back to me, like quality of life and like happiness, and it's kind of like, yeah, like, it's not to be hedonistic or selfish in that sense of like, I don't care about anybody else but myself. It's just recognizing that like, there there's no reason for anyone to suffer. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
so
I mean, that's what you have to look. You have to look and think, hold on, if this is work, if I'm having to work at this relationship, so there's inherently something not right with yourself, with the relationship, and possibly with your partner. There's something that's the other thing, because we get so attached. And when I say is that I would be hurt because I don't want to let that fondness go, that love go, the comfortableness, the shoulder to cry on, the person that when I've had a shit day at work, I come home to that listen to us gripe on, and and there, darling, it'll be fine tomorrow. That's what you hold on to, and again, it's all attachment,
Mhm.
because you just can't let that go. How many of us like separated or split up, and you're sitting crying into your drink, and I'll never find another one again. That's it. I'm never gonna have another relationship again. And then 2 months, 6 months, a year down the line, you meet someone and you're all starry-eyed again, and thinking with a little head and dancing on air, and honeymoon period. It's just a cycle of life, isn't it?
It is.
It's inward genetics. It's inward DNA to be together. I mean, if you want to take a couple from babies and put them in an island with no internet, no outside influences whatsoever, they're going to get together. Do you know what I mean? It's just all the shit and the attachments, and like you say, the music we listen to, the films we watch, the romantic novels we read. It's just, and we all build up this idea. The girls are taught, oh, Prince Charming's going to come along, and me Queen's going to come along, and this is what we get. Me perfect partner. Is there such a thing?
Hmm.
Because by definition, are you perfect?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where sometimes it's just warts and all. You've just got to be happy, and then whatever will be, will be.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right, man. Well, I think I think we may want to wrap it up just for the sake of the time for everybody. But
Yeah.
I definitely. I mean, we could keep talking forever, man.
It is. It's a big, big
talking to you.
subject.
Yeah, I love talking to you, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today for sure, man. So
It's been an honor.
yeah. So
Your knockout punch for today is going to be twofold. One, the feminine doesn't give a shit about your past. They don't give a damn about what you've done or how you've shown up in the past. The feminine lives in the now. Second knockout punch. It is the nature of the feminine to change. To change. It is the nature of the feminine to flow, to be dynamic, and to change. It's like the weather. It's like the ocean. Some days it's calm, some days it's stormy, but it is its very nature to be those things. When we have an understanding of these things, that the feminine lives in the now, and the feminine, by its very nature, is to change, we can start to look at our partners in a completely different light and gain a different perspective and a different understanding. And if we approach them with this new perspective and different understanding, we could probably start to negotiate more freedom, have less conflicts, and probably start to experience some more pleasure. All right. Thanks for listening. All right. That wraps up today's episode of The Real Zack Olinger. Thanks again for listening. If you happen to find this episode insightful or valuable, I invite you to pass it along to somebody else, because chances are, if you found it valuable, they will too. If you're on Instagram, you can find me at The Real Zack Olinger. Until next time, everybody. Thanks for listening.